Apple is, this is kind of weird. Apple is bringing AirPlay, HomeKit, and even screen mirroring support, iTunes, to third-party televisions now. This includes Samsung, LG, Vizio. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce everything correctly, okay? But let's think of the bigger picture here. Apple basically looked at the Apple TV and went, we don't like you anymore. And they just loaded the gun and shot it, because why would you get an Apple TV now? It's like, ooh, tvOS. That's cool. Other than that, though, now you can have AirPlay. You can literally do iOS screen mirroring on third-party TVs. You can, rent iTunes. You can access your iTunes movies on Samsung televisions. You can even have certain TVs be your HomeKit hub that aren't made by Apple. Why are they doing this? What year is it? Apple is just allowing the most bizarre things now, and if anything, this is really telling you how much Apple is betting on services being the future that's going to keep them alive. So yeah, a lot of people were definitely confused by this, and this was certainly something people were not expecting because it's not a very Apple thing to do. But Apple Music, I think, was a wonderful first step because that showed Apple was like, we need to make a music streaming service that's on as many devices as possible, because when it comes to Apple Music, our priority isn't necessarily giving a bunch of service exclusives to the people who buy Apple products. We just want a good streaming service for everyone. That's when Apple started making Android apps, which is really bizarre. And I think to this day, the only two Android apps Apple's ever made is Apple Music and the switch to iOS app. And that's about it. It's because obviously Apple doesn't want to give too many reasons for someone to be okay with switching to Android, but they were okay with it in that particular instance. They were like, hey, we'd like the money. The future's about services. We got to start putting hardware aside. And an even bigger step moved forward when Apple allowed Apple Music to be playable on Amazon Echo devices. This definitely caught a ton of people by surprise. They were like, wait a minute, you can be in the Apple service but not have to buy the HomePod to access Apple Music. They've been partnering a lot with Amazon. They started selling their products over on Amazon. If you wanted to buy Apple products directly through Amazon now, you can. And now you can listen to your Apple Music services through their speakers. So already Apple's changing up the game a little bit, but this TV thing was definitely a curveball a lot of people weren't anticipating because, for one, we know Apple and Samsung, that they don't get along. There's been years and years of legal battles there, and Apple likely looks at Samsung as their main competitor, given they're one of the largest Android smartphone manufacturers out there. Not to mention, we've talked about Samsung's marketing in here in the past. On this channel, you've seen me bring up all of the terrible, cringy Samsung commercials that, for the most part, are always hit pieces on Apple products, and I talk about how incorrect they are or how hypocritical they are, and the fact that Apple was able to put all of that marketing aside and put all that hate towards them aside and suddenly go, hey, you know, Samsung, you make fun of us a lot and you mock us constantly, but we would like to bring more services so people feel more incentivized to buy your TV. Samsung must have been like, what? You're not. It sucks. It sucks. And we're going to get way more people to buy the S10 than your crappy looking iPhone. I mean, look at that camera module. Everyone hates it. Yeah, you know what? Everyone does hate it. But we want your sales to be better. But hey, we hate you. Why aren't you hating us? But we hate you. Have we made this message clear? Samsung's better. We want people to buy Samsung products. That's great. Yeah, we want to help you do that. Can we put iTunes in our services? AirPlay, HomeKit, all that stuff? Can we bring them to your TVs? Well, I guess. Okay. The weirdest amount of cooperation we've seen from both of these companies before. Be like, you know what? Screw the Apple TV. Let's start selling Samsung devices that have Apple services on them. Perhaps this is Apple getting ready to launch their movie streaming service. So this rumor has been in development for a while, but it's not really anything that's not officially confirmed because Apple's been hiring all types of movie directors and all types of creators who are supposedly working on original content, and Apple's kind of already produced original content for Apple Music. Barely anyone uses it. No one watches those documentaries, but they're there. And it's been a talk amongst Apple for a long time that they're planning on launching their own Netflix competitor, or in 2019, we're also going to see Disney Plus. So Disney's going to be launching like their own service that has all of their movies and shows on it. It's going to be very competitive when it comes to streaming services this year, but Apple's rumored to get in on it, and perhaps in order for Apple to get the maximum amount of people using iTunes and get the maximum amount of people using this new streaming service, service that they'll supposedly be launching probably this year. I feel like they've been probably this year. You know, like they were talking about it back in 2017, and I kept thinking, oh, they're about to release it. Oh, they're about to release it. And then they don't. So I'm not exactly sure if we can count on this service coming out in 2019, but the fact that they're starting to push iTunes and AirPlay support on all types of third parties already, I assume for a certain price, you know, it's probably not free, but companies like Samsung, LG, they have to pay Apple a certain amount, or Apple gets a certain amount of royalties from every purchase of that Samsung TV or that LG TV, whichever one ships with HomeKit, AirPlay support, and stuff like that. Whoever sells some of those TVs, Apple's going to get a small percentage of, and this is the future that I think a lot of Apple's going to have to adapt to. They're going to be like, you know what, Apple TV, it isn't selling very well, but you know what might sell really well? Those smart TVs other companies are making. So let's just start collecting royalties, which to us techies or us big Apple fans who get excited over Apple events and new Apple hardware, this isn't very exciting, and I know it's more interesting if we hear about what Apple's working on or what their company's going to release. But in the long run, I think Apple's ideology of making everything perfect and true to their vision is ultimately going to be their downfall if the technology industry as a whole sort of plateaus, and there's probably a ton of people who don't really see the need to go out and buy new smart TVs all the time either. So Apple trying to make money any way they can is a really smart move at this point. Services is definitely the future. There's not too many times I can say that, because Apple's gonna make some weird choices that we're not used to seeing Apple make in the next couple of years to reorient themselves as a services company, especially given iPhones are the majority of their revenue, and as we all know, smartphone sales are not as good as they used to be. So Apple's gonna be making some weird choices. I don't think anything too drastic, like you're not gonna see iOS brought to Android phones. Don't think they're doing that. But who knows? Maybe Apple's even considering bringing iMessage to Android phones or stuff like that. Maybe for a small fee, or Google has to pay Apple a certain amount of money every year in order to keep iMessage over on Android. They'll start bringing over services slowly, a little bit at a time, and we're just going to see all these hardware companies that used to yell at each other and used to argue over who had the better hardware now start to play a bit more fair and go, oh crap, you know what? We need money. I think we all need money. So let's work together on this one. Sound good, guys? At least that's what I'm predicting. Let me know what you guys think of Apple playing more fair with all these TV companies down in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you in the next one.